What if the history you were taught in school was only a fraction of the truth? A story carefully rewritten to erase civilizations and beings too extraordinary to accept. Across the hidden corners of old maps, one word emerges again and again: Tartaria, a mysterious empire stretching across Eurasia, yet never spoken of in your textbooks. Some say Tartaria was once the largest empire the world had ever seen, a forgotten power that spanned continents, uniting lands under knowledge and advanced technology. But how could such a massive empire vanish from history so completely? No wars of destruction, no tales of collapse, only silence. Researchers digging through archives began noticing strange inconsistencies. Maps from the 16th, 17th, and even 18th century labeled vast lands as Tartaria. From Russia, Mongolia, China, even stretching into North America, Tartaria was everywhere. And yet today we are told it never existed. This silence raises a haunting question. What was Tartaria, and why was it erased? To find answers, we must dive into forbidden history, records buried under dust and denial. The mystery doesn't stop at maps. Legends, ancient manuscripts, and ruins hint at something even more unsettling: giants. Across cultures, from Native American tales to Norse sagas, giants appear again and again, towering beings who shaped landscapes and built structures too large for ordinary men. Could Tartaria have been a land not only of men, but of giants? A hybrid empire of humanity and colossal beings lost to time? Ancient builders left behind architecture so massive that even modern engineers struggle to explain it. Cathedrals, fortresses, and mysterious star-shaped cities that align with cosmic patterns. These designs were not the work of primitive tools. They hint at lost technology, perhaps harnessed by Tartarians or their giant allies. Some structures seem sized for beings far larger than ordinary humans. Doorways towering over 20 feet high, staircases with steps too vast for our stride. If these ruins truly belonged to Tartaria, then their builders were not like us. They were something bigger, something powerful, something forgotten. Official history dismisses these anomalies as coincidence or artistic choice. But when the same oversized designs appear across continents, coincidence becomes harder to accept. Why would cities across the world share the same star-fort patterns? Why would cathedrals in Europe mirror temples in Asia? The answer may lie in Tartaria's reach, an empire so vast it influenced architecture, culture, and myth on a global scale. But then, like a shadow, Tartaria disappeared, its name erased from history books, its people reduced to footnotes, its giants turned to myth. And yet scattered pieces remain: maps, ruins, forgotten manuscripts, all whispering the same forbidden tale. Tartaria was real, and perhaps it was home to the last giants this world would ever see. Skeptics argue that giants are nothing more than exaggerated folklore. But how do we explain the countless bones unearthed across the world? In America alone, newspapers of the 1800s reported discovery after discovery. Skeletons 10, 12, even 15 feet tall, dug from burial mounds and forgotten fields. These reports are now dismissed as hoaxes, yet many were written by reputable sources before such discoveries became inconvenient. Could these giants have been remnants of Tartaria's people, a scattered lineage erased by both time and human hands? If Tartaria truly fell, perhaps its survivors became the legends of giants we hear in every culture. The Cyclopes of Greece, the Jotnar of Norse myth, the Anakim of the Bible. Different names, same theme: colossal beings walking among men. Beings who shaped the earth in ways we cannot. Tartaria may have been their stronghold, a civilization where giants and humans coexisted, building wonders too advanced for their age. And if that is true, then the destruction of Tartaria was no accident. It was deliberate, an erasure of a forbidden chapter of human history. Who would want to erase Tartaria? Perhaps those who sought to rewrite history for control, power, and dominance. History is written by the victors, and in this case, the victors made sure Tartaria would vanish completely. But the ruins remain: massive stone blocks, ancient infrastructure, and star-shaped forts no historian can fully explain. Even the Great Wall of China has been questioned. Some believe it wasn't built to keep invaders out, but to keep something in. Could giants have roamed the vast plains of Tartaria, only to be imprisoned behind walls of stone? The possibility raises chills, and yet the evidence keeps piling up. From Siberia to the American Midwest, whispers of Tartaria and its giants refuse to fade. Mainstream historians scoff at these claims, but every year, more researchers uncover maps and relics that say otherwise. It's as if Tartaria's ghost refuses to die, the empire that never was, yet always was. The more you dig, the stranger it becomes. Symbols, hidden codes, and forgotten languages paint a picture of a highly advanced culture. Was Tartaria truly centuries ahead of its time, harnessing energy, building megastructures, and perhaps even communicating with the stars? The theory of free energy often appears in discussions of Tartaria, ancient towers that may have transmitted wireless power across vast distances. These mystery towers can still be found today, disguised as churches or ruins. Were they remnants of Tartarian technology? If so, then we have been living in the aftermath of a great cover-up. A world rebuilt on ruins we were never meant to question. But cracks in the story keep showing. Hidden archives, forbidden manuscripts, and whispered legends refuse to be silenced. Even the Vatican holds maps that hint at Tartaria's existence, yet they remain locked away, hidden from public eyes. What knowledge is being kept from us, and why is the story of Tartaria so dangerous to those in power? Perhaps because if Tartaria was real, then everything we know about history is false. The timelines, the empires, the narrative, it all collapses. And with it, the truth about giants. The beings who once walked beside us, erased because they didn't fit the story. But the more we explore, the closer we get. Piece by piece, the puzzle of Tartaria begins to reveal itself. And the truth, once uncovered, may change everything we thought we knew about our world. History, it seems, is not written in stone, it is rewritten in ink. So the question remains, what else has been hidden from us? If Tartaria could be erased, what other civilizations might have been lost? This is only the beginning. In the next part, we will dive deeper into the forbidden evidence, maps, relics, and bones that may prove Tartaria's existence once and for all. In dusty archives across Europe, researchers stumbled upon maps older than empires we know today. And on those maps, in bold letters, stood the name Tartaria. How could an empire marked so clearly be absent from our history books? Some of these maps were not obscure sketches, but official charts by respected cartographers, men whose work guided kings, explorers, and merchants. If Tartaria was fiction, why risk credibility by printing it for the world to see? The strange part is how long this labeling lasted. Centuries passed, yet Tartaria appeared again and again across different languages and regions. It wasn't until the 19th century that the name vanished completely. This sudden disappearance raises questions that history refuses to answer. Empires don't simply vanish overnight, nor do names fade without reason. Something or someone made sure Tartaria was erased. And when we look deeper into Tartarian ruins, another layer of mystery appears. Buildings with grand arches, colossal domes, and impossible symmetry. Designs that echo advanced knowledge of geometry and energy. These weren't crude stone huts or medieval castles. They resembled power stations, radio towers, and resonant chambers, structures too modern for their supposed age. Take, for example, the star forts. Massive city layouts shaped like intricate stars with moats and layered defenses. Their design wasn't just military, it seemed mathematical, even cosmic. Historians explain them as Renaissance fortifications. But why are the same exact star forts found in Russia, India, Africa, and the Americas? Was this Tartaria's global signature? Imagine a civilization whose knowledge spread across continents. Not through conquest, but through shared architecture and technology. That vision aligns eerily well with the mystery of Tartaria. Yet mainstream history dismisses this, calling it coincidence. But how many coincidences does it take before a new truth emerges? Maybe coincidence is just another word for cover-up. Evidence suggests Tartarians harnessed free energy. Their towers and domes weren't just for beauty, they may have transmitted wireless power, the echoes of Nikola Tesla's dream, centuries before his birth. If true, this changes everything we know about ancient technology. It means humanity once had access to limitless energy lost in the sands of time, or perhaps taken away to control us. The towers we see today, often disguised as churches or old ruins, may be remnants. Silent giants of stone and steel, standing as clues to a world forgotten. Have you ever looked closer at your own city's old cathedrals? Their spires and domes look suspiciously like energy conductors. Even the interiors seem designed for resonance, amplifying sound and vibration. Could these be echoes of Tartarian engineering? But the most controversial connection is with giants. Some theorists believe these grand buildings weren't just made for humans. They were scaled for beings much larger than us. Doorways taller than 20 feet, staircases wider than a truck. These weren't practical for ordinary humans. But for giants, they fit perfectly. Legends across the world speak of giants. From the Bible's Nephilim to Norse Jotnar, their stories echo in every culture. Were these stories distant memories of Tartaria's citizens? In Native American folklore, tribes recount encounters with red-haired giants. Some tales even describe fierce battles where giants preyed upon humans. Were these survivors of a fallen Tartarian empire? In the 1800s, American farmers often unearthed giant skeletons while plowing fields. Newspapers reported the findings, describing bones far larger than any human. Yet, those skeletons soon disappeared into museums, never to be seen again. The Smithsonian Institution has long been accused of hiding these remains. Officially, they deny it. But why do so many witnesses across states tell the same story of confiscation? If Tartaria's giants were real, their existence would shatter modern narratives. It would mean history isn't just wrong, it's been deliberately rewritten. And those in power prefer a controllable truth over dangerous facts. Even today, whispers of giant bones being unearthed in Siberia and Central Asia circulate. Locals speak of remains quickly taken by authorities. Why suppress discoveries if they are meaningless? Perhaps because the truth connects directly to Tartaria. If people learn the past held advanced empires and giant beings, they might begin questioning everything about authority and history. The cover-up may go deeper than just bones and ruins. It may extend to rewriting entire timelines, fabricating wars, and inventing histories. Could the world map itself be a lie? Consider this. The Mongol Empire we are taught in school overlaps suspiciously with Tartaria's map. Could Genghis Khan's story have been exaggerated to overwrite Tartaria's legacy? A convenient replacement narrative. 76. Even the architecture attributed to colonial powers may be misattributed. Those grand cathedrals in India and Africa, were they really European creations? or stolen Tartarian designs rebranded under empire? If so, then much of what we call colonial expansion was simply repurposing, repainting Tartaria's cities as their own, erasing the true builders, a historical theft on a global scale. This explains why structures in distant lands look strangely identical. Because they weren't built by separate empires, they were remnants of one, Tartaria. But Tartaria's story isn't just about structures. It's about people. An empire of knowledge and diversity, woven together across continents. What little we know of Tartarian culture suggests advanced medicine, music, and science. They may have understood energy, vibration, and harmony in ways we still struggle to grasp. Perhaps that's why they thrived. And yet their story was destroyed, libraries burned, records rewritten, names changed, a cultural genocide disguised as progress. But why such extreme erasure? Why target Tartaria so completely while other empires like Rome or Greece remained? Maybe because Tartaria threatened the very foundations of control. A world powered freely by energy, guided by giants and unified without conquest. Such a model doesn't fit the narrative of centralized power. It had to be removed. Even the Industrial Revolution may be tied to this erasure. By destroying Tartarian technology, humanity was forced into dependence on fossil fuels. Was this the real beginning of modern control? Look at old photographs from the 1800s. Many show grand buildings far beyond what we'd expect for newly settled towns. Who built them so quickly, and why do they look so ancient already? Some theorists believe these were Tartarian structures simply repurposed. Settlers didn't build from scratch, they inherited ruins. But that truth was too radical to accept. So the narrative shifted. Suddenly everything became colonial architecture, conveniently erasing Tartaria from memory. But anomalies remain. Stonework too precise, metal too advanced, and designs too consistent across continents. Details that mainstream historians cannot easily explain. Even photographs reveal oddities. Crowds of people dwarfed by massive structures, as if the scale wasn't meant for them. Evidence hiding in plain sight. And then there are the orphans. The mysterious world's fairs of the 19th century displayed advanced architecture, only to be torn down immediately after. Why? Some say these fairs were staged, a cover story to explain away surviving Tartarian buildings before destroying them, a controlled demolition of history. The sudden appearance of orphans in cities also raises suspicion. Where did these children come from, and why were they alone? Were they remnants of a reset civilization? If Tartaria truly fell, perhaps a cataclysm wiped out much of its population. Floods, fires, or even man-made disasters could have reset entire regions. The orphans may have been survivors. This ties into the mud flood theory. Many buildings worldwide appear partially buried, as if swallowed by earth. Windows underground, doors half buried, clear signs of something unnatural. The mud flood may have been the Great Reset, a disaster that covered Tartaria's cities, hiding them beneath layers of soil, erasing the past in one catastrophic sweep. Mainstream historians call it coincidence or settling of land. But when you see the same patterns across continents, coincidence seems unlikely. A global event makes far more sense. And if Tartaria was buried in mud, its giants may still lie beneath. Entire cities, technologies, and remains waiting to be uncovered. A treasure chest of forbidden history. This is why digging too deep often brings trouble. Researchers who push into forbidden areas find themselves silenced, careers destroyed, evidence confiscated. Yet the people continue searching. Independent historians, explorers, and truth seekers are piecing Tartaria back together, brick by brick, story by story. Because one thing is clear, Tartaria's ghost refuses to stay buried. The empire of giants, energy and mystery still lingers in ruins and whispers. And its story is only just beginning. By now you may be asking yourself, if Tartaria truly existed, where are the undeniable ruins? The answer is both simple and chilling. They are hiding in plain sight. Many of the world's most beautiful old buildings, from Russia to America, may not be as new as we think. They could be remnants of Tartaria, repurposed by later powers who needed to cover up a past too dangerous to reveal. Take a look at the grand train stations and cathedrals built in the 1800s. Official history says they were constructed quickly during a time of industrial expansion, but the scale, precision, and ornate designs suggest a different story. Could it be that these massive structures already existed, relics of Tartaria, simply rebranded as part of a new empire? The photographs from the 19th century only deepen the mystery. Early images show cities with immense buildings, but strangely, very few people. Streets appear empty, as though the cities were abandoned and only later repopulated. Was this evidence of a reset, where survivors inherited ruins that once belonged to Tartaria's lost citizens? Some researchers point to the World's Fairs of the late 1800s as cover stories. These fairs displayed entire cities of advanced architecture, supposedly built just for temporary exhibitions. Yet within months, they were torn down. Why build such masterpieces only to destroy them? Unless, of course, they were inherited structures that needed to disappear before people asked the wrong questions. And then there are the strange anomalies of buried architecture. In cities across the world, buildings appear half sunken into the ground. Doors and windows lie beneath street level, as though the earth swallowed entire stories of stone and brick. Could this be evidence of the so-called mud flood, a cataclysm that buried Tartaria's cities under layers of dirt and history? The mud flood theory explains much of Tartaria's disappearance. Imagine a sudden disaster, natural or man-made, that blanketed vast regions in mud, silt, and debris. Entire cities could vanish overnight, their ruins buried so deeply they seemed like foundations for new towns. It's not just one city that shows this pattern, it's global, which suggests a massive reset. Skeptics argue these buried windows and doors are simply changes in street level over time. But how do we explain the sheer scale of the phenomenon? From Europe to Asia, from America to Australia, the same architectural burial can be seen. It's as though a curtain of earth was drawn across the world at once, covering up the evidence of Tartaria. If such a reset truly happened, it would have left behind survivors, scattered populations trying to rebuild amidst ruins they no longer understood. This might explain the sudden rise of new nations in the 1800s, complete with infrastructure that seems far too advanced for their supposed technological stage. Survivors inherited Tartaria's bones, and history was rewritten to hide the truth. The connection to giants makes this picture even stranger. What if the buried ruins and massive buildings were originally made for beings much larger than humans? Staircases, doorways, and ceilings that dwarf our scale make sense if they were constructed by or for giants. The mud flood may not have only buried cities, it may have buried the evidence of entire races. Stories of giants do not belong only to myth. From the Bible's Nephilim to Norse Jotnar, from Native American legends to Asian folklore, giants appear again and again. Could they be cultural memories of real beings who once lived among us? And could Tartaria have been the empire where they thrived before disaster struck? During the 19th century, reports of giant skeletons unearthed in North America were shockingly common. Newspapers described bones of men standing 10 feet tall, with skulls larger than helmets. Farmers, miners, and explorers all stumbled upon them. Yet today, we're told these reports were hoaxes. Did hundreds of witnesses simply imagine the same impossible discovery? The Smithsonian Institution, often accused of hiding inconvenient evidence, allegedly confiscated many of these skeletons. Witnesses described crates of giant bones taken away, never to be seen again. If true, this raises a chilling thought. Perhaps Tartaria's giants were discovered, but their remains were hidden to keep the official narrative intact. Why would such evidence be suppressed? Because acknowledging giants would shatter the foundations of history as we know it. It would force us to admit that humanity once shared the earth with other intelligent, powerful beings. It would also lend undeniable weight to the theory that Tartaria was real, and its people included these giants. Legends from Siberia, where Tartaria is believed to have stretched, describe massive warriors with unmatched strength. In Native American tales, red-haired giants roamed the land, sometimes clashing with tribes in deadly battles. These aren't isolated myths, they're echoes of a shared memory, pointing back to the same truth. Giants were real, and they may have ruled Tartaria. Even in archaeology, strange remains defy explanation. Oversized tools, massive sarcophagi, and shoes far too large for human feet appear in digs. Are these simply symbolic artifacts, or are they tangible proof of giant civilizations? Mainstream archaeologists avoid the topic, but independent researchers keep asking questions no one dares to answer. If Tartaria was indeed home to giants, this explains why its buildings seem built on an impossible scale, towers that reach the sky, doorways 20 feet tall, and halls wide enough for titans. Modern humans walk through these ruins as though they were children inside a giant's castle. And perhaps that is exactly what we are, occupying a world not originally built for us. But this truth also terrifies those who control our history. If the public knew that giants once lived and perhaps even ruled, it would raise questions of origin, faith, and human destiny. Did we evolve alone, or were we one of many intelligent species? Did Tartaria fall because giants threatened the balance of power? These questions could dismantle modern belief systems. The deeper we dig, the more we find evidence of suppression. Bones vanish, ruins are mislabeled, and photographs disappear. The effort to erase Tartaria and its giants seems coordinated and deliberate. Who has the power to control the story of our past on such a massive scale? Some point to the rise of modern institutions in the 19th century. Museums, schools, and scientific bodies all emerged around the same time Tartaria supposedly vanished. Could this timing be coincidence? Or was it the beginning of a campaign to rewrite history, replacing Tartaria with the narrative we are taught today? If so, then Tartaria wasn't just an empire, it was the key to understanding humanity's real story. And that is exactly why it had to be erased. A civilization of giants, advanced technology, and free energy posed too much danger to a system built on control. So the past was buried, and we were handed a carefully edited version of history. But history has cracks, and through those cracks, Tartaria shines. Independent researchers, truth seekers, and explorers are piecing together the fragments, bringing this forbidden empire back to life. From star forts to mud floods, from giant bones to lost maps, the evidence is too vast to ignore. The question is, will we have the courage to accept it? What if the truth about Tartaria and its giants is still beneath our feet, waiting to be uncovered? What if every time you walk through an old cathedral or pass a buried doorway, you are walking over the bones of a lost empire? The truth may be closer than we think, but only if we dare to see it. The story of Tartaria doesn't just change how we see the past, it changes how we see ourselves. If giants walked the earth, if free energy once powered civilizations, then what else have we forgotten? What else has been hidden, not by time, but by design? Some say the past is a mirror of the future. If Tartaria fell because of a reset, whether natural or man-made, could the same happen again? Are we destined to repeat the cycle, rising into greatness only to be buried by mud and silence? The possibility lingers like a shadow over our world. But one thing is clear: the more people question, the harder it becomes to hide the truth. Tartaria's story is breaking free from the chains of suppression. With every map studied, every ruin examined, every whispered legend remembered, the empire of giants breathes again. And it demands to be heard. Imagine walking into an abandoned cathedral where the ceilings tower hundreds of feet above you. The pillars are thicker than redwood trees and the doors are so tall that even a two-story bus could fit through. Was this truly made for humans of our size, or for beings much larger? When you consider the legends of giants tied to Tartaria, these enormous buildings suddenly make sense. They were not grand designs for us, they were homes for another race entirely. In Siberia, where many believe Tartaria's heart once beat, countless stories tell of gigantic skeletons unearthed by explorers. Some claim to find jawbones big enough to cover a man's face, or femurs as long as a child's entire body. Official reports often dismissed them as animal bones or exaggerated myths. But when the same stories repeat across different cultures and regions, should we really call it coincidence? Or is this truth echoing through folklore? The Native American Paiute tribe preserves one of the most compelling legends. They spoke of a race of red-haired giants, fierce and terrifying, who once ruled parts of the land. The Paiutes say they eventually trapped these giants in caves and destroyed them in fire. Archaeologists later found massive bones and strange artifacts in those very caves, yet much of it was removed and silenced. Could these giants have been Tartarian remnants across the ocean? The consistency of giant legends across continents is staggering. In Norse mythology, the Jotnar were colossal beings who shaped the land. In Hindu texts, Rakshasas towered above men with supernatural power. In the Middle East, the Nephilim were described as mighty warriors. These stories span thousands of miles and years, yet they describe the same thing: giants. It's as though every culture remembered the same truth, just with different names. If Tartaria truly connected with these giants, then its erasure becomes easier to understand. Imagine if the public accepted that colossal beings once walked the earth. Entire religions, scientific models, and systems of power would collapse overnight. The powers that rewrote history couldn't allow such chaos, so the bones vanished, the ruins were rebranded, and Tartaria was erased, leaving us with only whispers. We are told that humanity's story is one of gradual progress, from stone tools to bronze, from steam engines to electricity. But what if this is false? What if we are not climbing a steady ladder, but instead survivors of cycles of destruction and rebirth? Tartaria may represent the last great chapter before the reset. Its giants, its architecture, and its technology were too advanced to fit the narrative, so they were buried in both mud and lies. Consider the impossible architecture scattered worldwide. Massive stone blocks weighing hundreds of tons lie stacked in perfect alignment in places like Baalbek or Sacsayhuaman. Historians say primitive tools made this possible, but the precision defies logic. What if these were Tartarian outposts built by giants who had the strength and technology to move mountains? Once you allow this idea, the impossible suddenly becomes plausible. The mud flood theory ties neatly into the giant question. If a worldwide cataclysm buried cities, it could have also buried the remains of these massive beings. Perhaps that is why reports of giant bones appear only occasionally, because most of them remain hidden beneath layers of earth. The rare discoveries are simply cracks in the facade, hints of a truth waiting to resurface. What's most unsettling is that many of the discoveries of giants happened not in ancient times but in the modern era. Farmers in the 1800s, miners in the early 1900s, even explorers during wars all claimed to stumble upon skeletons too large to belong to humans. These weren't myths, they were newspaper headlines, later scrubbed from archives. If nothing was there, why erase it so thoroughly? Some truth seekers argue that Tartaria wasn't just an empire of giants, but a society where humans and giants coexisted. The grand architecture served the giants, while smaller modifications allowed humans to live among them. Together, they may have formed a civilization that mastered technology, energy, and art far beyond what we think possible. This harmony, however, may have been their undoing, drawing envy and fear from rival powers. If this harmony was destroyed, who destroyed it? Was it a natural cataclysm like the mud flood, or something more deliberate? Some speculate advanced weapons were used to collapse Tartaria, erasing its presence. After all, maps from the 1600s and 1700s mention Tartaria clearly. By the 1800s, the name vanished, a single empire erased from every globe and textbook. That is not an accident, that is censorship on a global scale. We often underestimate the power of maps. A map is not just a tool of navigation, it is a tool of memory. By removing Tartaria from maps, cartographers helped erase it from collective consciousness. Generations grew up never hearing the name, never questioning its existence. And when you never question, you never discover. This was how Tartaria was buried, not just in mud, but in silence. The photographs of new cities in the 1800s with their immaculate buildings and empty streets may be snapshots of Tartarian ruins re-inhabited. Why are there no construction photos of these supposed grand projects? Why do we see them fully built but rarely being built? It's as though the cities were simply inherited, with survivors moving into the shells of Tartarian greatness. If Tartaria was inherited, then it explains why modern architecture pales in comparison. Our skyscrapers may be tall, but they lack the soul and detail of Tartarian stonework. Our churches and government buildings seem crude copies of something older, something more advanced. We are not creating, we are mimicking shadows of a lost civilization. The suppression of Tartaria may also explain our strange obsession with giants in media. From fairy tales like Jack and the Beanstalk to modern movies about titans, the motif of colossal beings persists. Are these simply creative stories or subconscious echoes of a forgotten reality? Perhaps art imitates life more closely than we realize, carrying fragments of the truth hidden in plain sight. Imagine if, tomorrow, undeniable proof of Tartarian giants was revealed. A skeleton unearthed before cameras, impossible to deny. How would the world react? Some would rejoice, hungry for truth. Others would panic, fearing the collapse of the history they've been taught. And governments? They would scramble to contain the narrative, for truth is power, and power must never be shared. The story of Tartaria forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. If history can be rewritten so completely, what else do we not know? What other empires, technologies, or beings have been erased? Our textbooks may not be guides to the past, but tools of control, designed not to teach us, but to limit what we believe is possible. The whispers of Tartaria are growing louder. Communities of researchers, historians, and everyday people are connecting the dots across continents. Old maps, architecture, folklore, they all converge on the same conclusion. Something enormous was hidden from us. And like a buried city rising from the ground, the truth refuses to stay buried forever. Even skeptics are beginning to admit the coincidences are too great. How can so many legends of giants align with so many unexplained ruins? How can so much coincidental erasure happen in the same century? The deeper one looks, the harder it becomes to dismiss Tartaria as mere conspiracy. At some point, denial becomes less rational than belief. Tartaria's giants may also explain strange footprints found worldwide, massive impressions in solid rock, as though colossal beings once walked there. Scientists say they are natural formations, but when you see toes, arches, and heels carved into stone, it's difficult not to wonder who made them. Could they be the footprints of Tartaria's lost inhabitants, frozen in time? Some explorers claim to have found enormous underground chambers, too large for human use. These spaces, often under old cities, seem built for beings with different proportions. Could these be the hidden remnants of Tartarian infrastructure? If so, then much of Tartaria may still exist beneath our feet, waiting for us to uncover it. This leads us to another unsettling question. What if some giants survived? If Tartaria fell in the 1800s, that was only a few centuries ago. Could remnants of these beings still live in isolated places, hidden from modern eyes? Some cryptid reports of massive humanoids in remote mountains or forests may not be myth at all, but glimpses of survivors from a forgotten age. Whether or not giants still walk among us, their memory lingers in the stones, in the ruins, and in the suppressed reports. They were part of Tartaria, part of our shared history. And until we accept them, our story will remain incomplete. Tartaria isn't just about the past, it's about reclaiming the truth that was stolen. The possibility of Tartaria changes everything we think we know. It forces us to reconsider our origins, our place in the world, and the cycles of civilization. If giants built our cities, if free energy once powered the world, then humanity is far older, far greater, and far more mysterious than we have been told. Tartaria is not just history, it is destiny. And perhaps that is why the story of Tartaria resonates so deeply today. Deep down, we feel the cracks in the official story. We sense the weight of something missing. Tartaria fills that void, offering a vision of a world where giants walked beside us and empires reached for the stars. It is forbidden history, but forbidden only because of the power it gives back to us. When we peel back the layers of Tartaria, we don't just find lost architecture and whispers of giants. We find evidence of a world connected in ways our textbooks deny. Across continents, similar star-shaped forts appear, all built with uncanny precision. How did people supposedly cut off from one another design the same massive structures? Unless, of course, they were part of the same forgotten network. The star forts, aligned with sacred geometry and often linked to water systems, may have been more than military bases. Many researchers believe they functioned as energy hubs, tapping into natural currents of the Earth. If Tartaria had giants, perhaps these structures were part of a larger technology, one designed for beings with strength and knowledge far beyond ours. It wasn't just war they prepared for, it was power on a cosmic scale. Energy is a thread running through Tartarian theories. The spires, domes, and intricate designs of cathedrals weren't only for beauty or worship. They may have been antennas capturing and distributing free energy. Imagine a world where no one paid for heat, light, or movement. If Tartaria had mastered such technology, erasing it would serve one purpose: control. Because a society that cannot be charged for energy cannot be enslaved. Think about how every empire we're taught to admire, Rome, Greece, Egypt, comes with endless volumes of documentation. But Tartaria? Silence. It's as if someone took an eraser to history itself. That kind of silence doesn't happen naturally, it's manufactured. And the more we examine, the more we see that Tartaria wasn't destroyed by time, it was deliberately deleted. Maps again reveal the cracks in the story. Tartaria appeared in textbooks and atlases until the 18th century. Then, almost overnight, it was gone. No wars of conquest, no gradual decline, just absence. How do you erase a landmass the size of Asia from global memory? You don't, unless you replace it with something else. The rewriting of geography itself was the final nail in Tartaria's coffin. Some researchers argue that Tartaria's fall coincided with the rise of the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't just about machines and factories, it was about replacing old knowledge with controlled innovation. Instead of free energy, we were given coal and oil. Instead of giants shaping stone, we were told of primitive tools and endless labor. The world we inherited is not one of progress, but of downgrade. The Industrial Revolution might then be seen as not humanity's triumph, but its reset. A system designed to chain us to fuel, to work, to dependence. If Tartaria was erased to usher in this era, then history is not a straight line of progress. It's a carefully crafted illusion, ensuring we remain consumers of controlled power. And what's scarier is that it worked flawlessly. But cracks remain. In rural villages, oral histories still speak of the giants who once lived nearby. In remote libraries, forgotten maps still name Tartaria. In photographs from the 1800s, strange ruins and enormous doorways defy explanation. These aren't coincidences, they're fingerprints of a history that refuses to stay hidden no matter how many times it's buried. The suppression of Tartaria may explain why certain discoveries vanish quickly from public view. Reports of giant skeletons once common in American newspapers suddenly stop. Museums quietly lost their most controversial artifacts. And universities? They reinforced the narrative, discouraging research into anything labeled pseudoscience. Yet the truth seekers keep digging, and every year the evidence grows harder to ignore. Imagine if the same institutions that claim to preserve history are the very ones hiding it. What if museums aren't warehouses of truth, but vaults of secrets, locking away the artifacts that prove Tartaria's reality? If giants' bones rest in those vaults, then our entire understanding of humanity is incomplete. The question is, how long can the truth stay caged? Across America, the Smithsonian has long been accused of hiding evidence of giants. Old newspaper articles from the 19th century describe skeletons ranging from 8 to 12 feet tall, unearthed in burial mounds. These reports weren't rare, they were frequent. Yet today, the official story is silence. If nothing was there, why erase the record? Unless those skeletons didn't fit the approved narrative. The erasure becomes even more suspicious when we consider indigenous oral traditions. Native American tribes often spoke of giants, sometimes feared, sometimes respected. These weren't just legends, they were cultural memories. If Tartaria's giants migrated or their stories blended with local traditions, then perhaps these myths are fragments of a bigger truth. Myths that mainstream history conveniently dismisses as fantasy. Let's not forget the architecture. Have you ever walked into an old building and noticed the doors towering above you? Or stairways that seem far too wide for comfort? Some theorists suggest these aren't mistakes in design, they were built for larger beings. If so, these relics of construction are silent witnesses to a time when humanity wasn't the only race walking the earth. And what about the melted ruins found across Europe and Asia? Entire stone structures appear as if they were subjected to immense heat, walls fused together like glass. Traditional history explains this as volcanic activity or accidental fires. But what if these ruins are the result of weapons, advanced energy weapons, that wiped Tartaria off the map? The destruction wasn't natural, it was engineered. This leads us to a disturbing possibility. Was Tartaria the victim of a global reset? A deliberate catastrophe meant to wipe out not just people, but memory itself. Floods, fires, earthquakes, events written as natural disasters may have been orchestrated attacks because to erase a civilization so vast, you don't just burn their books, you burn their world. The great flood myths that appear across cultures could tie into this reset. From Noah to Gilgamesh, from Native American legends to Hindu texts, nearly every culture remembers a cataclysmic flood. What if these stories don't describe separate events but a shared memory of Tartaria's destruction? A flood so great it washed away both giants and the empire they called home. When the waters receded, who controlled the narrative? The survivors. And perhaps not Tartarians, but those who benefited from their erasure. Imagine rewriting the world from scratch, new maps, new rulers, new religions. Suddenly humanity is told it's primitive, that progress must be built slowly, painfully through centuries. Meanwhile, the real legacy of free energy and giants is buried deep underground. Even today, we stumble on traces of this lost world, advanced masonry techniques in ruins that can't be replicated with modern tools, megalithic stones placed with laser-like precision, cathedrals that act like resonant chambers. All of them whisper of knowledge far beyond what we are told was possible in the Middle Ages. This isn't coincidence, it's the shadow of Tartaria. If Tartaria had giants, perhaps they weren't monsters but builders, engineers, keepers of ancient science. Their size would have made moving massive stones effortless. Their knowledge, passed down through generations, might explain why certain designs repeat across the globe. Maybe the pyramids of Egypt and the temples of South America weren't isolated achievements but echoes of the same forgotten blueprint. And yet, the giants disappeared, or were made to disappear. Skeletons vanish from museums, old reports fade into obscurity, and we're told, over and over again, that it's all myth. But remember, myths survive for a reason. They're fragments of memory, kept alive in stories when evidence is destroyed. Giants didn't vanish because they never existed. They vanished because someone wanted us to forget them. What happens when you start to connect the dots? You see a pattern: lost empires, suppressed evidence, mysterious architecture, myths dismissed as fantasy. Each piece, on its own, can be ignored, but together they form a puzzle, and that puzzle reveals a truth too dangerous for mainstream history. A truth that whispers, Tartaria was real and so were its giants. The next time you step into an ancient cathedral, look closely. Notice the vaulted ceilings, the impossible acoustics, the sheer scale. Were these buildings really meant for small congregations of medieval peasants? Or were they designed for something bigger, something grander? Perhaps they were monuments for giants, or machines built to harness a kind of power we no longer understand. Even city layouts reveal mysteries. Old world cities often form geometric patterns, circles, stars, spirals, designs that align with energy flows. Who taught our ancestors such advanced planning? It wasn't trial and error, it was knowledge. And knowledge doesn't vanish without a fight, which begs the question, who fought to erase Tartaria's knowledge, and why? Think about the psychology of control. If people believe they are small, fragile and alone in history, they're easier to rule. But if they knew their ancestors lived alongside giants, harnessed free energy, and built civilizations spanning continents, control would crumble. Erasing Tartaria wasn't just about history, it was about power, and it worked. The ruins of the old world still stand, even if they've been renamed. Castles, cathedrals, fortresses, all labeled as medieval despite their impossible precision. Could these be Tartarian legacies rebranded by those who rewrote history? If so, every stone you pass on a European street may be a silent witness to the empire you were never meant to know. Artifacts tell another story. Devices resembling capacitors, evidence of liquid mercury in ancient sites, resonant chambers carved into rock. These aren't relics of superstition. They're fragments of lost science, a science that might have powered Tartaria and its giants. And yet, whenever such discoveries surface, they're quickly dismissed as anomalies, tucked away, into the category of unexplained curiosities. But anomalies pile up, and when they do, they stop being anomalies. They become evidence. Evidence that points to a forgotten chapter of humanity. Maybe giants weren't myth. Maybe Tartaria wasn't fantasy. Maybe everything we've been told about our past is a carefully constructed cage designed to keep us blind to the greatness we once shared. If giants walked among us, then the very definition of human expands. Were they another species, a hybrid, or simply humans of a different scale? Ancient texts often describe intermingling, unions between gods, giants, and mortals. Could these be distorted memories of a time when our bloodlines were more diverse than we can imagine? If so, fragments of giant DNA may still live within us. The silence from academia grows suspicious. If giants are fantasy, why suppress discussion? If Tartaria is myth, why erase it from maps? True science doesn't fear questions, it embraces them. The fear we see here is not scientific. It's political, and that means the truth is dangerous, not because it's false, but because it undermines the story we've been forced to believe. And here's the most unsettling thought. What if giants and Tartarians didn't vanish at all? What if remnants survived, hidden underground in remote corners of the world? Ancient texts speak of beings retreating into mountains, into caves, into hidden realms. Are these merely metaphors, or do they hint that the giants, like Tartaria, are not gone, just waiting? It's almost poetic. The bigger the secret, the easier it is to hide in plain sight. We look at ruins every day, call them cathedrals or castles, and never question their scale. We accept history as it's taught, never noticing the holes. But once your eyes open, the illusion crumbles, and then you realize Tartaria isn't just history, it's the key to understanding everything we've lost. And if we've lost it, perhaps we were meant to, because the moment we rediscover it, everything changes. The narrative of slow progress collapses, the story of human limitation dissolves, and in its place a new reality emerges, one where giants, free energy, and a global empire existed not in fantasy but in fact. And once you see it, you can never go back. This is why exploring forbidden history matters. It's not about conspiracy for its own sake, it's about reclaiming truth, about piecing together the fragments that mainstream history has abandoned. Because the greatest danger is not believing in giants, it's believing that we are small. And that belief, more than anything, keeps us chained. So ask yourself, why is the past guarded so tightly? Why are some questions ridiculed, while others are celebrated? History isn't just about the past, it's about shaping the present. If Tartaria and its giants were erased, it wasn't because they were irrelevant, it was because they were too powerful to remember. Power is always at the heart of it. The power to shape narratives, to define what is real and what is myth, to tell entire generations who they are and where they come from. That's why Tartaria's story matters. Because if we can uncover even a fraction of its truth, we reclaim not just history, but ourselves. Perhaps one day, more evidence will surface that cannot be ignored. Bones too large to dismiss, ruins too advanced to explain away, maps too clear to deny. When that day comes, the story of Tartaria and its giants will no longer be forbidden history. It will be the history. But until then, we remain the seekers, piecing together the shadows. Seekers like you, watching now, who are brave enough to question, who see the cracks and refuse to look away. That is where change begins, with questions, with refusing to accept the narrative as final. Because once you question history, you begin to free yourself from the chains of falsehood, and freedom is dangerous. Dangerous to those who thrive on control, That's why giants were erased. That's why Tartaria was buried. Not because they were fantasy, but because they were truth. And truth is the one thing that can't be controlled forever. It always finds a way back to the surface. When you hear the word forbidden, it's easy to think of fantasy. But forbidden history is simply the history someone doesn't want you to know. That alone should make us curious, because what kind of knowledge is so dangerous that it must be hidden for centuries? Only the kind that empowers us. So here we are, standing at the edge of two realities. The one we're told of slow progress, primitive ancestors, and empty myths. And the one we uncover of lost empires, advanced energy, and giants walking among men. Which one will you believe? That choice, in the end, is yours. But remember, every empire that hides history eventually crumbles. Lies can't last forever. And as the evidence of Tartaria seeps back into public consciousness, the control weakens. We are in the early stages of remembering, and that's something no institution can stop. Imagine a future where Tartaria's truth is embraced, where free energy powers our world, where giants are acknowledged as part of our ancestry, and where humanity rediscovers the greatness it once had. That future may seem distant, but it begins with awareness, and awareness begins with you. You see, history isn't just written by the victors, it's erased by them. And Tartaria is proof, but the erasure is never perfect. Crumbs remain, maps, myths, ruins, bones. And those crumbs are enough to rebuild the loaf, enough to see the picture they tried so hard to hide. As we close this chapter, remember that truth doesn't demand belief. It simply exists. Whether giants walked beside us or not, whether Tartaria thrived or not, the evidence is there. And as long as seekers chase it, forbidden history will never truly stay buried. So keep your eyes open, question the impossible, challenge the official story. Because history isn't just about what happened, it is about what we were allowed to remember. And when you realize that, the real adventure begins. Perhaps one day the forbidden will be taught openly. Children will learn of Tartaria alongside Rome and Egypt. Giants will be acknowledged as part of our shared past. And the world will finally see itself not as small and fragile, but as vast, powerful and connected. Until then, the burden falls on us. The seekers, the curious, the ones who refuse to be silenced. We may not have the institutions, the museums, or the textbooks, but we have the questions, and sometimes questions are more powerful than answers. Because answers can be controlled, but questions, they spread, they ignite curiosity. They tear down walls of silence. That's why questioning history is an act of rebellion, and rebellion, in the end, is how truth survives. So the next time you hear someone dismiss Tartaria or laugh at the idea of giants, remember, mockery is a weapon. It's easier to laugh at forbidden history than to face it. But behind that laughter lies fear. Fear that the truth, once revealed, will shatter everything. And maybe that's exactly what we need. A shattering of illusions. A rebirth of knowledge. A reconnection with the greatness we lost. Tartaria and its giants may be hidden, but they're not gone. They live in the cracks, in the whispers, in the seekers like us, and together we'll keep. Imagine walking through a ruined city buried under layers of time. What if the bricks you touched once formed the foundation of a forgotten empire, Tartaria, erased from official history? The mystery deepens. Many maps from the 15th and 16th centuries still showed Tartaria as a vast region stretching across Eurasia. How could such a large civilization simply vanish from collective memory? Was it erased deliberately? Some researchers claim old cataclysmic floods, possibly linked to global resets, wiped out Tartarian cities. Could these be the same mud floods described in legends? A buried truth waiting beneath our feet. The concept of mud floods often ties to hidden buildings where lower floors appear mysteriously underground. Were these architectural anomalies the result of natural disasters or a cover-up of grand civilizations? If Tartaria fell to a worldwide catastrophe, then evidence of ancient giants walking their lands may have been lost in the rubble. But whispers of bones and skulls still surface in forbidden reports. Stories from Siberia to North America speak of skeletons far larger than modern humans. Could Tartaria have been their empire, or at least a stronghold where giants lived alongside humans? Historians often dismiss giant bones as hoaxes, but what if suppression plays a role? Imagine a narrative too disruptive to be accepted, that we once shared Earth with towering beings erased from memory. One of the strangest claims is that Tartarians had advanced technology, rivaling what we have today, or even surpassing it. Free energy devices, intricate architecture, and even flying machines. Why do so many old structures still baffle modern engineers? Could Tartarian builders, or giants themselves, have engineered feats impossible for ordinary men? The scale alone raises uncomfortable questions. Think about it. Entire architectural wonders hidden or reattributed to other empires. How much of our history is borrowed, stolen, or rewritten to fit an official story that hides deeper truths? Ancient photographs and lithographs show star-shaped cities with geometric precision. These are attributed to fortresses, but were they something more? Energy hubs, perhaps, built by Tartarian minds. When you hear about star forts across Europe, Asia, and the Americas, you can't help but wonder, were these remnants of a global civilization connected under the name Tartaria? Some explorers note strange similarities in architecture between Moscow, Istanbul, and even distant Mexico. Did Tartaria influence far more of the world than we are led to believe? Even the concept of giant doors, towering arches, and vast ceilings sparks debate. Were these oversized features built for aesthetics, or designed for much larger beings than us? In this light, Tartaria isn't just a lost empire. It's a puzzle piece hinting that human history is intertwined with giants, forgotten technology, and catastrophes too massive to imagine. Imagine if every ancient reset, every collapse was part of a cycle. Civilizations rise, are wiped away, and the survivors inherit fragments. Could Tartaria be just the last erased chapter? Some say evidence is in plain sight, locked in archives, dusty maps, and abandoned buildings. If so, why hide it? To control how we see ourselves, our potential, and our origins. After all, if Tartaria had free energy and advanced architecture, then modern society's narrative of progress might not hold. We'd have to admit we lost knowledge, not just gained it. And if giants truly roamed their lands, the idea of human uniqueness crumbles. The story of our species becomes more complex, filled with cohabitation, competition, and maybe even cooperation. So ask yourself, why are so many references to Tartaria quietly erased? Why are giant skeletons seized, misplaced, or destroyed? The truth may be too disruptive for mainstream history. Legends across the world, from Norse gods to Native American stories, describe giant beings. Could these myths be memories of Tartarian giants lingering in cultural memory? In Mongolia, tales of massive warriors echo through folklore. Could these have been Tartarian giants? Their footprints may still mark the land, hidden beneath centuries of silence. Siberia, a land often tied to Tartaria, holds mysteries too: megaliths, massive stones, and unexplained ruins. Were these the works of ordinary men or something much larger? Some say Tartaria may have been destroyed by a global war, not just a natural disaster. Could giants have been caught in that war, leading to their extinction and erasure? Even in ancient chronicles, kings and rulers describe fighting giant tribes. Were these battles real? Could they have marked the fall of Tartaria as a global power? Think of the implications if Tartaria fell not from time, but from targeted erasure. It changes everything about who controls history and how much has been hidden from us. What if the real story isn't just about Tartaria? What if it's about cycles of civilizations and we're the latest inheritors with only fragments left to guide us? Our textbooks present a straight line of history. But what if the truth is a spiral, looping through rises and collapses? Tartaria might be one of many civilizations cut down. Evidence may still exist in ruins, in folklore, in artifacts misclassified or hidden. The only question is, will we dare to look closer or accept the tidy version of history? The mystery of Tartaria challenges us not just to question history, but to imagine futures. If we rediscovered their secrets, how would our world change today? Some believe Tartaria held knowledge about frequencies, sound, and resonance. Could their buildings harness energy not from wires but from the very air around them? If so, then their fall wasn't just a tragedy, it was a theft of free power, of possibilities, and of a way of life far beyond our dependence on modern industry. Now think, every time you see a cathedral, a mosque, or a palace, could you be looking at Tartarian remains, rebranded by newer empires that took the credit? Many churches in Europe display onion domes and spires that match Tartarian styles. Coincidence, or inheritance from a civilization long erased? When we piece these mysteries together, a picture emerges. Tartaria wasn't a myth, but a reality, overwritten by powers that shaped the modern world. And if giants walked among them, then history wasn't just lost, it was sanitized, stripped of its strangest truths to keep us blind to what once was. Could Tartaria be the missing link between myth and history? A bridge between legends of giants and the unexplained ruins scattered across continents? Some explorers insist Tartaria is the key to unlocking not just lost history, but human potential. Could this be why the topic is censored or mocked today? The more we dig, the clearer it becomes. Tartaria and its giants weren't just erased by time. They were erased by design, rewritten to fit a smaller, safer version of history. But here's the question. What if the truth is already resurfacing? With every artifact, every rediscovered map, every whispered legend, the story of Tartaria refuses to stay buried. So next time you walk through an old city, look closer. Could those bricks, arches, and designs hold traces of giants and Tartarians? History might be hiding in plain sight. Legends of sky beings and builders might not be fantasy after all. Were these just poetic names for Tartarian giants whose presence was erased? Even the size of doorways and windows in old structures whispers of a time when humans weren't but the only beings shaping the world. Could Tartarian giants once have entered there? The fragments of Tartaria form a haunting mosaic. Ruins, folklore, and forbidden bones paint a story far richer than we're told. Doesn't that make you wonder what else is hidden? We stand at the edge of rediscovery. If Tartaria's truth emerges, our entire worldview could shift about history, power, and humanity itself. So why should we care about Tartaria? Because its erasure shows us how fragile truth can be. And rediscovering it might change how we see ourselves. Each buried ruin, each giant skeleton whispered about, could be a key. And with enough curiosity, maybe we'll unlock the doors history tried to close. Imagine telling future generations that we once ignored giants, free energy, and a lost empire. Wouldn't that be the real tragedy? So here's the choice. Accept the sanitized story or dig deeper, questioning, exploring, and rediscovering. Tartaria is waiting if we dare to look. This isn't just about the past, it's about the future. The more we uncover about Tartaria and its giants, the closer we get to understanding humanity's true potential. Don't stop here. Keep searching.